Kamloops Indian Residential School. The Kamloops Indian Residential School was part of the Canadian Indian Residential School system, located in Kamloops, British Columbia. It was once the largest residential school in Canada, with its enrollment peaking at 500 in the 1950s. The school was established in 1890 and in operation until 1969, when it was taken over by the federal government from the Catholic Church to be used as a day school residence. It closed in 1978. The school buildings still stand today, and is located on Kamloops First Nations. Kamloops, pronounced Kamloops, abbreviated and previously known as the Kamloops Indian Band, is a First Nations government within the Shuswap Nation Tribal Council, which represents 10 of the 17 Second Band governments, all in the southern central interior region, spanning the Thompson and Shuswap districts. It is one of the largest of the 17 groups into which the Second Shuswap Nation was divided when the colony of British Columbia established an Indian reserve system in the 1860s. The school was taken over by the federal government in 1969, during which time no classes were offered, but was operated instead as a residence for students attending school in the area until being permanently closed. The building was the first Kamloops Museum, which opened in 1982. The school was featured in the 1962 Christmas-themed film Eyes of the Children. Produced by George Robertson, the film followed 400 students as they prepared for Christmas and aired on the CBC on Christmas Day. In the 1988 book, Resistance and Renewal, Surviving the Indian Residential School, Celia Haig Brown argued that the school system had failed due to the resistance of the Shuswap people, pointing to their continued existence as a nation as evidence. Although its effects have been devastating for individuals, the Kamloops Indian Residential School was not successful in its attempts to assimilate the native people of the central interior of the province. In 1991, a special edition of Second News offered a different perspective, reporting that the public policy, which led to the operation of the school for more than 80 years, had done its job. English is now the predominant language within the Shuswap Nation, and the survival of the Shuswap language is uncertain. Hundreds of Second children attended the school, many forcibly removed from their homes following the introduction of mandatory attendance laws in the 1920s. The children were forcibly removed from their homes once attendance became mandatory, their parents under threat of prison if they refused. Children who attended were not allowed to speak their native Second language nor practice their own spirituality, and were whipped for using it. Many children ran away, or was it they just disappeared and died? In addition to Second children, students from communities across British Columbia, including Penticton, Hope, Mount Currie, Lillooet, attended the school, along with students from other provinces. At one point, it was the largest Canadian residential school in Canada, with its enrollment peaking at 500 in the 1950s. Canadian politician Leonard Marchand, a member of the Okanagan Indian Band, was among the many students to have attended the school. Another was George Manuel, of the Second Nation, who said his 3 strongest memories of the school were hunger, speaking English, and being called a heathen because of my grandfather. In 1910, the principal said that the government did not provide enough money to properly feed the students. On December 24, 1924, the girls' wing of the school was destroyed by a fire, forcing 40 students into -10 degrees Celsius, 14 degrees Fahrenheit, weather in only their night clothes. 3 years later, in 1927, a report outlining the conditions at the school concluded that the poor construction of buildings at the school led to numerous infections, colds, bronchitis, and pneumonia during the previous winter. Kamloops Indian Residential School was established in 1893, after initially opening on May 19, 1890, as the Kamloops Industrial School. The stated aim of the school was the acculturation of indigenous children. J.D. Ross of Kamloops was awarded the $10,000 contract to erect the initial set of industrial school buildings in April of 1889. 3 two-story, wooden structures were the first buildings on the site, consisting of separate living quarters for boys and girls, and the school's teachers, along with classrooms and a recreation area. Michelle Hagan served as the industrial school's first principal, resigning in 1892, at which time the government charged the Oblates of Mary Immaculate with running the school. Father Alphonse Marie Carrion was named principal of the school in March 1893, following Hagan's departure. In his submission to the Department of Indian Affairs 1896 annual report, Carrion emphasized that the moral and religious training of students at the school was the most important of all, stating that school officials must keep constantly before their mind the object in which the government has in view, in carrying on the industrial schools, which is to civilize the Indians, to make them good, useful and law-abiding members of society. Hey. Yeah. Can you believe that? The school continued as the Kamloops Indian Residential School until 1978. Located on the traditional territory of the Secapemkuluk. During the 1957 to 1958 influenza pandemic, the Kamloops District Health Officer, D.M. Black, reported that half of the students at the school had been ill. At the time, health officials from the University of British Columbia acknowledged the infection rate was slightly more than normal but not a serious worry. In 2015, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada determined that the residential schools were a system of cultural genocide. It concluded that at least 4,100 students died while attending the schools, many of them due to abuse, negligence, disease, and accidents. The report observed that it would be impossible to estimate the total number of deaths that occurred at the schools. In May 2021, the remains of 215 children buried in unmarked graves were confirmed to have been found at the site. As of date, the Catholic Church are above man's puny concerns and have nothing to say. Their members are that of God and are just saddened by the whole thing. Yup. Okay, just found something else. It has been announced by the Kawasas First Nation in Saskatchewan that they have found hundreds of newly discovered gravesites of children at the site of the former Maryville Indian Residential School. It is believed that this will be the largest amount of graves found at a single residential school so far. It is predicted the number could be as high as 3 times that of the 215 graves found in Kamloops recently. This Roman Catholic-run residential school was open from 1899 to 1997. Oh. I just uncovered more. They have just discovered 751 grave at the site. I am sure the Catholic Church are gathering their thoughts on this tragedy and will follow with an statement or apology at a later date. Thank you for your time. Till next time. If I have mispronounced any words or phrases, please forgive me as I can only redirect, only for the best intent to understand the genocide from the past. The gall of some churches to say that they're the word of God, only to hide in their shame. The atrocities thrust upon the children under the cloak of God is violation of God's trust, and what do they have to say to that? Nothing. What? Are we still on?